I'm Dr. Emily Silverman, and welcome to Talking Dementia with Remo Health. Join us as we explore the latest advances, insights, and strategies that help empower those living with dementia and the families that support them. Each episode, we sit down with leading experts, from physicians and researchers to policymakers and clinicians, to provide you with the resources needed to navigate this complex disease. I'm Dr. Emily Silverman, and you're listening to Remo. Today, we're speaking with Rebecca Berry. Rebecca is a bestselling author and live storyteller whose work has appeared on the Moth Radio Hour, TEDx Ashbury Park, and in numerous national publications, including the New York Times. Her first book, Later at the Bar, was a New York Times bestseller and New York Times notable book and was shortlisted for the Story Prize. Her memoir, Recipes for a Beautiful Life, was a Book of the Month pick in the New York Times Motherlode, Redbook, and Book Riot. You can find Rebecca on Substack, where she writes about creativity, spirituality, caretaking, and cats in her column, Out of My Mind. Rebecca, welcome to Remo.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
So, Rebecca, we found you because you published a beautiful essay in the New York Times about your experience with your dad and his Alzheimer's journey. So, to begin, let's talk about your dad. Can you paint a picture for us about who he was before Alzheimer's and how he changed or stayed the same since his diagnosis?
Well, it's funny. Since his diagnosis, I feel as though his essence has become even clearer. So my father has always been a very practical person, a very tender-hearted person, a very loyal person, and I know I said practical already, but very pragmatic. He's a Virgo, very balanced. He's very literal, extremely literal. He was a huge adventurer, always. I mean, he loves being outside. He was a photographer. He photographed for Trains magazine and chased steam engines most of his life. And so he's just a very multidimensional person. And since his diagnosis, I feel as though parts of him have faded. He's a little less exacting. Some of the sharper edges of being a very exacting, practical person have softened. I don't know. It's a hard question to answer because to me, he feels almost in some ways more himself, but then there are pieces of him that are different, very different, because he doesn't remember as much. There was one time when we took him on a trip to Cape Cod where he went all the time as a child, and we were at this family house that he had gone to almost all of his summers in boyhood. And he recognized it and liked being there, but I think it was hard for him to be out of his routine. And my sister was there from Oregon with her family. And at one point, he and I went for a walk. And I said, Dad, how's it going? What's it like to be out of your own space? And he said, it's good. You know, there are a lot of people here. I don't always know who they are. And I said, that must be hard. And he said, yeah, they're being all nice to me, so it doesn't bother me that much. And I said, but you know who I am, right? And he looked at me and sort of shrugged and went, My grandmother also had dementia. So when she stopped recognizing me, I sort of got used to what it's like to be around someone who doesn't know you anymore, who you love. So that prepared me for this. So it doesn't upset me the way it did when I first encountered it. But I also feel like in this disease, there are so many moments that you have available for connection. It's almost like you just have to find them and then run towards them. And they're not the same as it is for other people. Actually, with other people, there's so much ego in the way often, and there's so much presentation that people are trying to do to present themselves. And they're always thinking about the future or the past or how they are, myself included. One thing I've noticed with my father is this has dissipated. And so there are these openings for connection that didn't exist before, and then other ways I used to connect are gone. For me, it's been a reorganization of where I look for openings. And once I started losing him, I just said, okay, I'm flying towards any opening for connection. And so that's what I try to do.
How did you get to that disposition? I really love what you said about how some doors close and others open, and part of being in a relationship with someone with dementia is running toward those new doors that open. Is that something that you just figured out intuitively through your interactions with him? Or did you go through an initial period of shock and sadness and then there was a moment where you realized that new doors had opened? Or did you read something somewhere? Or how did
No,
you
it was
figure that out?
it was a journey. So first there was my grandmother who had Alzheimer's, and then my mother got kidney failure. And when my mother got kidney failure, there was a moment when I said to my husband, we're sort of at a turning point. I could come up with another book proposal and try to write another book, but I don't really want to. I just want to put a certain amount of time towards driving my mother to and from dialysis. So I started doing that. And we sort of looked at how much that would cost us for me to spend that much time as a caregiver and figured out it would put us X amount into debt and figured we could manage it. And so we did. And then as mom got frailer, then dad got diagnosed. And then that grew into caretaking for them. But I had made a conscious decision that I knew there was going to be a financial sacrifice, and there was, but I just thought I'd never get those years back. So I was willing to take that risk. So I did that. I also have a very, very steady meditation practice, and I do a lot of meditating. When I meditate, I really ask for grace and I ask for messages. I ask for anything to help me in a situation. I always get them. I don't use it to quiet my mind. I use it to let my imagination run wild. So meditation is thrilling for me because it's this wide open world. So I'll sit down and say, okay, whoever wants to help me out there, I need help with this. And I just get quiet and I always get help. And I write down my questions and then I write down what comes up from my heart or my soul or whoever. And that has been a really, really, really helpful practice. So that helped me. Helping mom helped me. And also, my mother was still alive when this started to happen, and she buffered it because he was really angry and kind of mean in the beginning. And there were days that were so hard. So many times when I came home and just was sort of like, I can't do this. It's so hard. He doesn't like me anymore. I don't know who he is. There were a couple things that happened. Mom died, for one. And when mom died, we kind of came together towards the last maybe 3 months of her care because we were the ones really witnessing her pain and we were doing that together. And something bigger than our brains took over for that. So there was a shift then. And then after she died, I think for him, he loved my mother so much. And the weight of trying to keep her alive for both of us was so hard because we couldn't, you know? The weight of caring for someone who's in a lot of pain, which she was the last couple months, was gone. Something really softened in him. And by then we had really bonded over this experience. It's very strange because I think if I were to say to him, do you remember that? He doesn't really remember me helping at all during that time period. He sort of remembers it as being him and my mother. But something happened. And so it was definitely a process. Whatever you think I am, I'm not naturally that way.
I love what you said about your meditation practice, that you don't use it to quiet your mind, but you use it as an invitation for imagination and an invitation for help from other, beings or other aspects of your spirituality. And this practice of writing down a question or a set of questions. And then when you sit to meditate, just seeing what comes up internally or from the beyond or whatever you want to call it. And was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about that practice and if you would be willing to share any of the messages that have come through, because I know so many families lean on faith and spirituality for support during these difficult journeys.
I've always been a highly creative, highly imaginative person. So when I meditate, I don't let any of those voices that say that's crazy, that's not real, I don't let any of them in. So for me, it's just this wild world where I spend a lot of time talking to whales. I love whales. They give me a lot of wonderful messages. But the way it works for me is I write down a question. I write a letter. I'll just say, Dear Universe, or Dear Whales, or Dear Spirit Guides, whoever I feel like talking to, Dear Soul. And then I just pour my heart out. Today was awful. How can you help me? A specific example I have is one day I was having such a hard time. We were broke. My son needed braces. I didn't know how I was going to manage. My husband was saying I needed to get a job. I knew I did. I'd applied to places, but I just felt like if I had to add a job into all of the other things I was doing, caring for my parents, taking care of my kids, everything, and taking care of myself, I would just be stretched too thin and I wouldn't be able to be the person that I was. And I knew somewhere that it was very important that I be the person to be in this role. Even if sometimes mom and dad didn't want me to do it, I just felt very strongly that I had to do that. And it was important to me. So I think I had asked mom if she would consider paying me just a little bit. And she just said no. And I could tell that she just couldn't bear the idea of being my job. It was just too hard for her. And I didn't want her to be my job. I didn't want to have to ask. I didn't want any of that. But we were just in a place where I needed help. And in order to help people, I needed support. And she said no. I was really just so upset and sad and ashamed and embarrassed and also scared. So I sat down by some water and I meditated and I just said, I need help. I don't know how to get through this. And if I'm not the right person to do this, just show me. And when I got quiet, I felt this really gentle, soothing presence, which to me always feels like the whales. It just was this very old, very loving, very gentle presence. And I just heard, just drop your agenda, just be with them. Don't worry about it. The way to be with people in this period is every time you enter the room, drop your agenda, drop what you think they should do, drop what you think anybody should do, and just look them in the eye and be present with them. And the next day I went back out to the house and I was also feeling really unappreciated. I remember too, I was like, nobody appreciates me. I'm working so hard, blah, blah, blah. And I went out to the house and I got there and mom was in bed. She was in a lot of pain. And dad was really upset because he couldn't make her feel better. And they would never have called me and asked me to come over, but they were just sort of in a really painful moment. And I got into bed with mom and I just said, oh, mom, what hurts? And she said, everything hurts. And it's so hard. Your father's so angry. And my father was like, I am angry. Everything's broken. The computer won't work. And mom said, I'm not working. And dad said, everything's awful. And I just said, I know this is so hard. And then I said, let me rub your feet. So I rubbed her feet and dad sat in her walker. He was sort of rolling around next to her in the walker. And we all just were there. I remember it was beautiful outside. It was February. It was the end of the day and it was snowy outside. So there was this purple lavender sky outside reflecting off the snow. And it just felt like a blessing. And we all sort of relaxed. And then my mother said, I think you were exactly the person who needed to show up today, and you showed up at the right time. Everything dissipated, all my anger, it just all went away, and we figured out how to manage. So I would say it's sort of a subtle practice. I do these things, I get messages, I forget about them, but then something will show up and I'll just remember, and then something beautiful will happen. So part of it is this dance of asking for help, getting some kind of crazy, strange message, and then waiting for it to manifest and then recognizing it when it comes and just being like, oh, yes, thank you, thank you, thank you.
I love that. You can tell that you're a writer because the way that you talk about scenes and characters is just so compelling. I'm like on the edge of my seat, so drawn into everything that you're saying. So thank you for sharing that story with us. You mentioned some of the financial aspects of being a caregiver with family, and the Remo team actually recently traveled to Austin, Texas to do a panel on this very topic. I think the title of the panel was The Economic Impact of Dementia. And we talked a lot about the impact on individuals and the impact on families, and also the impact on Medicare and more at a national level. And just since you brought it up in that last story, was wondering if for people listening who that's a very strong component of the calculus of what they're dealing with, if you had any thoughts or wisdom to share about that element of things.
It's a really hard topic. I remember having a conversation with my sister where I just said, I know that I should be making money another way. I didn't want to ask my parents for money. I didn't want to ask anybody for help, but I did not have the bandwidth. I couldn't even write. I kept thinking, okay, I could come up with another book idea. I'd written a little children's book and I was trying to sell that and it wasn't going anywhere. And I just felt like nothing was working. Now, looking back, I know why. I did not have the bandwidth for editing. I didn't have the bandwidth for anybody to tell me anything. I only had the bandwidth to take care of people I loved. And that is such sacred, purposeful, devotional work. I feel like people sometimes act like you're such a good person for doing that, or that's such a good thing to do. And it's actually not. I don't feel like I'm a good person. I love my parents. I love my family. I love them. I love writing. There are things that I love and I do them. I think it's very purposeful and devotional work. And people don't do it out of the goodness of their heart. They do it because they're good at it. And sometimes they aren't even good at it, but they do it anyway out of love. So I guess I feel like we have so many cultural ideas about how work done out of love, that phrase, oh, it's a labor of love. I'm always a little bit like, well, if labors of love should be for no money, then what are all the other labors? Those are labors of not love. Those are not good. I don't understand that setup. So I guess I feel like what was hard was the idea that if you are a child, you are doing this out of duty to your family. I understand that. I know that's how my mother felt. I remember once her saying to me, I would never, ever have asked my parents for help in helping them. I just felt like it was my duty to them. And I thought, right, but you actually didn't do what I'm doing.
Mhm.
You relied on other people to do that because you didn't have time. You had a job, you had all these other things. They were in assisted living. So I think there's that thing culturally that we believe in that, oh, the children should take care of the parents and they shouldn't ask for money. And I was very embarrassed to ask for money and very ashamed of that. But I think economically, we're not in a place where that is feasible anymore. It wasn't feasible for me. It was really hard, and I managed it, but it was very hard. And we're still struggling with some of the repercussions of that. I would not take it back for the world. I am so glad I did it. I feel like money can always be worked out, but time with people you love is so valuable. Time is everything. That's how I feel. Caregiving is such invisible work, and we throw money at things that caregivers then have to clean up. And I think that is very hard. And I think there are caregivers all over the country where if somebody just said, you know what, we're just going to give you $10,000 for your labor of love. We don't even care what you do with it. Go to a spa. Who cares? Just take it because you really dedicated yourself to this work. I think the amount of money it would take to make people so happy would be not very much at all. And it would just open up the floodgates of love and joy all over the country. Because it's really hard to be doing that work and to feel like you shouldn't ask for support or you shouldn't be asking for support and you should be a better person and be loving and kind all the time and all this stuff that comes from some kind of Puritan, I don't even know what. But I don't think it's very helpful. And I think it's really hard.
I wanted to talk about this moment in the story where you bring your dad a record, a beloved record of his.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. That day. That day was so gorgeous. I actually brought him a record player and a record. So he didn't have a record player that worked, and my sister gave me her record player. And so I brought the record player out, and then I had this record of Veracruz Wapangos. And my parents met in Mexico and fell in love in Mexico. And my father loves Mexican folk music, and I love Mexican folk music. I mean, we just love it. We could listen to it all day. And when I was growing up as a little girl in rural upstate New York, I listened to mariachi music all the time. I really wanted to be Mexican. I just loved everything about it. So I had this record and I had a record player, and I knew Dad loved music, and I just felt like this would be a really big gift. So I was very excited to share it with him. And I had remembered this one record. It's called Veracruz Hermoso. It's from 1961 or 63, and I had found it on Amazon. I thought, oh boy, this is going to make Dad so happy. So I brought it out and I was like, I have this present. You're going to really like it. And he said, okay. He'd forgotten I was coming. And so we had to set up the record player. So we had this whole time period where we were trying to set up the record player. We had to find a wire and we had to go into the shop room. We found them in this gnarl of wires that looked like Medusa's hair. It was just like we got everything. I don't know anything about electronics. Me and this 87-year-old man put this together, got it to work. We dropped the needle on this song, and the song was El Colas. Veracruz harp music is exciting. It's so explosive. So the whole house, which had been pretty quiet since my mother died, just filled with this music. It barreled through the house and it was so exciting. My heart flew out of my chest and I looked at Dad And I was like, it works. And he was crying. Tears of joy were pouring down his cheeks. And then they started pouring down mine because we were so connected through this thing that you wouldn't expect two upstate New Yorkers to be connected through. But it was just so moving for both of us. And he kept saying, you can't know what this means to me. And I thought, of course I know what it means to you. That's why I brought it out here. I found it online, blah, blah, blah. I remember this is the songs they played in the square when you and Mom first met. But he kept saying it over and over. You can't know what this means to me. And after a while, I thought, maybe I don't. Maybe I don't. To me, it really spoke to the power of music to transcend everything. I just think music heals so many things. And speaking of ways to fly towards connection, sometimes I feel like just putting on music that somebody loved or that you love, there is an opening there that I can't describe or explain, but it is so transformative and sublime and magical. So that was a really beautiful moment. I'll always remember it.
You talked about the memory loss of Alzheimer's in your essay and about how, in a way, when you lose memory, you kind of lose grudges or you
Yeah.
lose. I think there was a line in the essay that said, like, in some ways we become better versions of ourselves because there's memories that we've lost that maybe it's good that we lost or something like
Well,
that.
yeah. I wondered if I would be a nicer person if I had I do not want to lose my memory,
Of
just
course, of
sending
course.
that out to the universe right now. But in the essay, I thought, gosh, I walk around all the time. That person, oh my God, I can't believe my sister said that. Whatever gets into my little brain and stays there and then makes a little grudge. And I just thought, what if you woke up one day and all of those were gone and you just didn't have anything? You forgot when you went to the grocery store that you go to all the time that person at the cash register was mean to you because you, whatever. What if you just forgot all of those? We work hard and we think we drop these resentments, but they're still there. But what if they were just gone? How much freer would we be? I know memory loss is terrible, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything because, of course, my father is very frustrated, and there are things that break my heart that he can't remember. But there is also a way that he is happy now that he wasn't before. And I think some of it is he just doesn't worry about things he used to worry about. He just isn't carrying the weight that he carried before. And I did say this in the essay, but going out there is like entering this sacred realm where there's no past or future. All that matters is the person that's in front of you. And it is very magical. Time doesn't matter anymore. The news isn't really a big deal. It's just the person in front of you, the fire in the stove, the music that's playing, the conversation you're having. That's it. And sometimes it's even just the sound of that person's voice. Sometimes when Dad's telling me a story he's told me before, I know I've heard it before, but I just think, you know what? I'm so happy to hear this person's voice. I love this person. This voice is not going to be here forever. So I just listen with that in my heart.
There's a lot of humor that shines through in your writing. And I'm just wondering if you could speak about humor in your writing, humor in caregiving. Maybe there's moments of humor that stand out, or how you think about humor in all this.
I think humor is a godsend. I don't know how I would be alive on planet Earth without humor. That's one thing that I've really noticed is he's so funny about his disease. And I am so grateful for that because in the beginning, he was not. He had no sense of humor and he was mean. He was just so sharp. And I remember one day where I said, Dad, that was mean. You were just so mean to me. And he couldn't even register it. I can't imagine what it was like for him. I don't know. It must have been so hard, but he just was so angry. I don't even know what changed that, but that is not there now. And so now in its place, he's very funny about his disease. He said the other day, he's always losing his glasses. So he's like, my glasses, I can't find my glasses. This desk is a mess every night. I clean this desk up. And then in the middle of the night, somebody comes down and messes it all up again. And I said, Dad, that just doesn't happen. And he said, I know. And I'm trying to find somebody to blame. But since I live alone and the only person who's here is me, he's the one I'm trying to blame. And he doesn't like it very much. He's very able to joke about it. And he's really funny. And he'll say, I have Alzheimer's. Sorry if I don't remember you. I have Alzheimer's. I'm sorry if I got this. I made a mistake. I have Alzheimer's. So because it's not an easy thing for him to accept, but he has accepted it, that just allows for more humor. And I think without that, my experience would be, I know because there was a period where he didn't have a sense of humor and it was horrible. Sense of humor is another opening for connection. That's another thing to run towards if it's possible. Some people do not have a sense of humor about it, and that is really painful. It's really hard.
I was struck by what you just said, which is that your dad will just say to people pretty easily, like, oh, sorry if I don't remember, I have Alzheimer's. And I wanted to mention the stigma of Alzheimer's. Not everybody would feel so comfortable probably saying that to people. And I'm wondering, like, how does he talk about his Alzheimer's to other people? How do you talk about his Alzheimer's to other people? And how do we think about the stigma associated with Alzheimer's and how we might work toward lessening that stigma?
It's so funny. I feel like in my family, there never really was a stigma. We just sort of were like, oh, this is happening. So we both walk around. We go to the store, or I'll be on the phone with the bank or something, and I'll just say, listen, my father has Alzheimer's. He doesn't like it as much when I say it. I think because it infantilizes him a little bit, and he's very sensitive to that. And I completely understand that. But he rolls with it really well. But it's true. He has Alzheimer's. And so I think this is the Virgo part of him and the practical part of him, the literal part of him. He just doesn't lie. He never has. So for him, it's sort of like, this is a true thing. I have this. But what I appreciate a lot about dad is there's a humility about it. So he'll just say, this is why I don't remember you. You know, he is trying to take care of the other person. We have so much around being remembered. I did before this happened. I used to hate it when people didn't remember me. If I met someone at a party and then I met them later at another party and they said, oh, hello, I've never met you before, I'd be like, oh, so offended, you know, like, oh my God, I thought we had such a good conversation about. But now I've sort of relaxed around that because I'm used to being around people who don't remember me. Like I said, my grandmother had it, my aunt has it. And so if we can let go of being remembered, that's sort of an egoic thing that it's important that people remember you. And so I think some of the stigma comes with being embarrassed that you don't remember people. And I think allowing yourself to just say, I'm not going to remember you because my brain isn't working that way anymore, but I can be present. And actually, that's a gift that a lot of people who remember a lot of things don't have. And so I think there's an offering that people who are living with dementia have, which is that they are much more capable of being present in the moment. And people spend millions of dollars to go on retreats to get more present. Again, I don't want to sugarcoat it. I know that many people would give all the presents in the world to have a parent back the way they were. And for me, I really see that there are things in this disease that I've found very valuable and illuminating. I know that's not true for everybody, but it is for me. And so I think stigmatizing it by talking about how awful it is all the time or how people should just be put away and you don't want to be around them because they're weird and they can't remember. I just think that's something that isn't really necessary to hold on to. I don't really know if I have an answer for destigmatizing it, but I've seen a lot of beauty in it.
You've brought us so many wonderful stories about your meditation practice, asking questions, getting answers, letting go of ego, the power of music. I'm wondering if you have any other thoughts or words of advice to share with people listening who are dementia caregivers who may feel overwhelmed or isolated or like they're doing it wrong. What would you say to somebody who's in that place?
I think that all of those feelings are completely reasonable in this job. I still feel like I'm doing it wrong. I still feel overwhelmed. I still feel worried. If you are a caregiver for someone who has dementia and you're showing up and you are looking at that person with recognition for their spirit, for the work they're doing at still being alive on this planet, and even if they annoy you, but you're still caring for them tenderly, even when your brain can't stand it, if your hands can be sweet, you're amazing. You're amazing. This is sacred work. It's beautiful. When I start to feel those feelings, which I do, I try to focus on tenderness coming from me in any way that I can. So if I can't do it with my brain, I try to do it with my hands. If I can't do it with my hands, I try to do it with my voice. If I can't do it with any of those things, I try to get on the phone with somebody who can be tender to me, because that means that I need somebody to be sweet with me. And if I can't find anybody to be sweet with me, I sit myself down in a chair and I write down all the things that I would like someone to say to me, that I'm hungry for, that I just want somebody to say, you are a rock star, you are a hero. You just put up with someone saying something to you that you know they don't mean it, but it hurts so much and you didn't deserve it. And you're a rock star for showing up every day. I just write those down and then I say them out loud to myself. Like I mean it. It's hard work. People go to support groups. I have sisters and a husband and friends who support me, so I don't do that. But I know that those can be really, really helpful resources. I just get my butt in a chair and write things down that I need, and then I try to somehow give them to myself if nobody else will.
What you said about if I can't be sweet with my brain, if I'm overwhelmed, if I'm frustrated, if I'm annoyed, can I be sweet with my hands or can I be sweet with my voice? That really hits home for me because I definitely have had similar experiences when I've been taking care of people, my dad and my mom, and even patients because I'm a physician, just to remind ourselves that there are a lot of different ways to care. And like you said, just a gentle touch can go a long way. And so I really appreciate everything that you've said and you being so open and joyful and willing to share about you and your dad and your family. It's been a really wonderful conversation.
Oh, thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
I have been speaking with Rebecca Berry. Rebecca is an author and a caregiver and overall wonderful storyteller. So thank you, Rebecca, again for coming on to Remo.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Talking Dementia with Remo Health. If you're looking for more information, resources, and expert insights, visit remo.health and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, take care.